When you
currently.
say interdimensional beings, that they know that these are interdimensional beings, how do they know that?
Based on testimony, would be based on witnesses that have come forward. But what I can tell
So
you
the
is
witnesses just were told that they were
no,
interdimensional?
that they've seen things. And what I can tell you without getting into classified conversations is that there have been incidences that I believe where very credible people have reported that there have been movement outside of time and space.
That's very vague.
Yeah. So, look.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Look. Have I seen a portal open? No. Have I seen a spaceship personally?
The testimony from, government whistleblowers, even some of the video footage we see over the years, especially from the earlier years before the deep fakes were possible, are sort of like compelling to me in many cases. Not always, but in many cases it is. This is the whole story. But, I reserve belief and I just kind of stay curious about it. I like following it. And I guess the reason I'm intrigued by it is because I've always been a science fiction fan. And in fact, ufology has a really big sci-fi, link to it. It's associated with science fiction a lot. Many of the critics, many of the unbelievers say that ufology is just science fiction. And, that's very possible. But it's also possible that there's something we can't explain going on that needs to be investigated. And I think that's valid. And that's actually happening. And it's getting more and more accepted in our culture to talk about UFOs and UAPs. Even the designation UAP from UFO shows an attempt to legitimize the topic altogether. And since 2017, there's been this trickle of videos and whistleblowers and more attention put onto the topic for transparency reasons, and also because people really want to believe. People want to have this smoking gun evidence for life, intelligent life, that is, out in space somewhere, that these intelligences have an interest in us. And now we have this in the news feeds every day. We have the Three-Eye Atlas situation. And Avi Loeb is warning that it could be, not necessarily is, but could be a mothership of some kind of large technological craft, because of its trajectory. It lines up with the planets around the sun, which is like a 1 in 500 chance of that actually happening from an interstellar object like a comet. It's a very low probability that it would take that trajectory, is what they say. And also the physical compounds that they measure coming off of this comet doesn't really make sense. The colors, they're now saying that the jets are on the wrong side of the comet. Like, how comets have a tail from the back, from behind, and it, well, this one has a tail that faces the sun. It faces where it's actually going, which is kind of mysterious and anomalous. Personally, I don't think it's a UFO right now. I don't think there's enough evidence. I think it's just a weird interstellar object. And it's very anomalous, so it needs to be investigated. That's all I can say. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. That's kind of what UFO means, unidentified. If it's unidentified, you can't then turn around and identify it as this or that. You just have to leave it as unidentified. So I leave that option open, and I'm all for it. Unless these hypothetical beings seek to do us harm, then I'm not all for it. But I'm all for knowing what the facts really are in this whole thing. But the problem is, a lot of folks, when they look at these videos presented by whistleblowers and people like George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell, all these, releases of videos and things of that nature to explain the anomalies. Lots of folks, including David Grusch and Jeremy Corbell, talk about interdimensional beings, these non-human intelligences, NHI is what they call them. In other words, aliens. These aliens are interdimensional beings. Why do they say that? Well, because traveling all across the universe would take too long. And so if these creatures came from light years away, the argument goes it would take too long for them to travel, and it wouldn't make any sense for them just to come to the earth and do their thing when it took millions of years to get here. Even at the speed of light, it could take, an unimaginable amount of time to reach the earth from where they came from, depending on where they came from. So they say no, they use that's old school technology. That's just linear travel. Space and time are connected, and so space and time is non-local ultimately. And so many physicists talk about extra dimensions, like in string theory, which string theory is just a hypothesis. It's not really proven or anything. And thus, this gets to the problem. I mean, you've all heard it by now, the claim that UFOs or UAPs might not be from outer space, but from another dimension. It's an idea that's gained a lot of traction among UFO enthusiasts and even government whistleblowers like David Grusch, as I mentioned. But here's the issue. There is absolutely no scientific evidence that interdimensional travel is even possible in principle. Yeah, modern physics does include mathematical frameworks that describe higher dimensions, like in string theory, in superstring theory, and all of this stuff. M theory proposed that reality might have more than the three spatial dimensions we can see. But those extra dimensions, if they exist, are thought to be curled up at an unimaginably small scale, far way too small for any person or object or craft to actually move through. So while it sounds scientific to say interdimensional, what's actually happening is science fiction being dressed up in science language, right? And that's the real problem here. The more UFO experts push speculative ideas like this as probable explanations, the more credibility the field loses. It makes serious investigation into UAPs look like a sci-fi fan club instead of a legitimate research effort. I mean, if we really want to understand what these anomalies are, if we truly care about the truth and the evidence, we have to separate testable science from theoretical storytelling. So maybe it's time to drop the sci-fi talk, because ufology already carries enough stigma. What it needs now is rigor, skepticism, and a clear line between imagination and investigation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm all for UFOs. I believe there are UFOs. I just don't make the leap to say that they're demons or angels or interdimensional beings or aliens from Mars or some creature that co-evolved with us on the earth and was hidden under the water or something like that. Could be. All of those could be the truth, for all I know. We could be in the Matrix. We could be a brain in the vat. So none of this, the problem of hard solipsism defeats, any sort of special pleading you might make, because we could just, all we really know is we're having an experience, an awareness of a reality. And everything we say about this reality is an inference. We attribute, but we attribute using what? Using our mind. And our mind is what? Our mind is limited. We know it's limited because we're learning every day. We're always learning. We know more today than we did yesterday. So the mind is like a sponge, And everyone, as a species, as a human family, we're growing together in our knowledge. No one has the monopoly on the truth, and it may be inaccessible for observers like us in this reality to actually have access to the truth, maybe. Who knows? So we shouldn't be too cavalier and confident in what we say the truth is about reality. The only thing we really know is that we're having a conscious experience. That's the only thing we know exists for real as it is, as it's understood to us primarily as a conscious experience. The contents within the consciousness, like the rocks, tables, chairs, planets, and all of that, that's what they are. They're contents, and they're an artifact of language. We describe them, and even when we describe them, we're only pointing to something. We don't know what it really is, and especially when it comes to this ufology stuff, we don't know what these anomalies really are. We don't even know what physical things really are ontologically. But at least in reality, we have, you know, a relation with the rocks, the tables, and things like that, the planets, the stars, all of that stuff. We have a direct relationship with it every day. And our relation creates a knowledge about these things because we relate to these things every day. But do we really relate with UFOs every day? Is that something we all see, or is that something that are considered anomalous, kind of like rarities? I mean, that's why they're so fascinating, right? Because they're so rare, because they're so anomalous. We don't have a really consistent relationship with UAPs or any anomalous sort of phenomena we could point to. We don't. That's why they're called anomalous. And so these things should be put in the category of the unknown or the other if we want to be honest, right? Now, if we want to just go with our passions and be undisciplined mentally, we'll go ahead and assign an attribution to it like they're fairies or whatever. Fairies are true, and I say this 100% because of these anomalous observations. You can do that, but you'd be lying to yourself at the end of the day, and you'd be doing the fairy movement a disservice because eventually we're going to find out we were wrong, as we always do, about most of reality. We learn about things. We're always learning. And our paradigms are shifting at times. The way we understand the world shifts. What we thought was just so concrete and real turns out to be, very not the whole story, or maybe just a part of the story. Like the blind people touching the elephant. Some people touch the tail, some people touch the trunk. And then they just assume, this thing that we're touching is a trunk, or this thing is a tail, or this thing is a foot. We don't see the whole picture, because we've got, blinders on our mind, for one, our limited mind. Anyways, man, I just wanted to say that really quick. What do you guys think? Do you think that interdimensional travel is possible? Why or why not? Why should we? Do you have any citations that would say that interdimensional travel should be possible? I've heard of these gravity machines, like anti-gravity devices that we supposedly have, classified projects that may explain the UFOs. In fact, they say that these anti-gravity devices were actually backwards engineered off the alien technology, that they use this anti-gravity technology. But is anti-gravity technology the same thing as interdimensional travel? Is it? How does it work? I don't know if anyone really knows. I think people talk about it. I understand that in physics, anti-gravity would be any mechanism that would produce like a repulsive force against gravity, allowing like levitation and stuff to move without propulsion. But so far, there's no known force or technology that can cancel out or reverse gravity as it's described by general relativity. But even if they did, this isn't the same thing as interdimensional travel, is it? I mean, well, while anti-gravity in science fiction is pretty popular, legitimate gravity-related research is ongoing. Like NASA and ESA study this gravitational shielding effects all the time. Quantum gravity researchers are trying to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics. Advanced propulsion fields like ion drives, plasma thrusters, or RAP metrics explore alternatives to rockets, but not anti-gravity, right? So really there's no evidence or working model of an anti-gravity machine that actually exists. And every experimental claim has sort of failed replication or to be explained by physics at all that I've ever seen. Gravity is geometry, not a force you can simply turn off in my mind. But studying it continues to teach us about the structure of reality, and that's really exciting, of course. The way that gravity appears to us and what it does, it has its own rules, but it's not a force from what we understand. We can't turn it off like that. So tell me what you think. Is interdimensional travel possible? What about anti-gravity, and what's the relation between interdimensional travel and anti-gravity devices? Let me know, man. I'm very interested about this stuff. I'm very open-minded. It's just that the things that I want to believe, I'm very aware of the fact that I want to believe these things. I really want to believe in aliens and demons and all of these things, but I remain skeptical of those things because I want them to be true. You know, I'm aware of cognitive bias. I'm aware of how that can form our most cherished beliefs. It's just the things we want to believe for whatever reason. And if you're aware of that, if you can become aware of your of this situation playing out in your mind, then you have a little more control. You can feel a little more control of what you can actually how you can frame things a little more reasonable if that's what you choose to do. If you choose to be honest with yourself, then become aware and then start to explore yourself and see, do I really have good reasons for believing these things, or am I just believing these things because of illusion or delusions of the mind, right? I try to do that all the time. And so we can kind of exercise that muscle by exploring some of the things you really want to believe. Like if you really believe in UFOs, this might be a good time to reflect on interdimensional travel. Is that example valid as an explanation for this anomalies of UAPs and UFOs? You know, this is a good way to test out your critical thinking skills.